Dunedin was a glorious mix of eating one of the best fried chicken burgers at the Comes First Diner, a steak and wine dinner at the hotel, splendid quality time catching up with my cousin's family and her quickly growing and more talkative daughters, revisiting my favorite spot in Dunedin, St. Clair Beach, and getting our Duck Island fix, a Cambridge, New Zealand-based ice cream company. With only a mere 2 weeks in New Zealand, we had to get a move on, so we hopped on a familiar green and white intercity bus and drove westward towards Queenstown, New Zealand's tourism capital. We were met in Queenstown by our Brazilian mates, Julia and Pedro. We shared a house with this lovely couple during our time working out in Christchurch, and they heard we were briefly in the country, so they actually made the trip out to Queenstown to spend some time with us. Pedro had never snowboarded before, and what better place to learn than Queenstown? So we picked up some gear at the newly expanded Green Toad location, had a couple of drinks, and then went to bed. The next day, we loaded up our gear, snow chains, and drove up the Remarkables mountain towards the ski fields. I felt emotional once again seeing that breathtaking view overlooking Frankton and Queenstown, driving up that all too familiar, gravelly, unsealed road. Pedro quickly got the hang of snowboarding after only a couple of runs down the beginner hill, so I slid into the DMs of my Aussie mate Luke to see if he was around and wanted to go for a slide. Perfectly timed, he was off from work that day and we had a nice reunion at 2,319 meters. We broke for lunch, had a toast to the great snow conditions that day, and I took what would be the last photo of my dear GoPro Hero 7. At this point, I had shot some great footage, arguably some of the best snowboard footage I'd ever shot. I was doing really well that day. I was landing 180s that I normally don't land so cleanly, and also I had this really funny clip of Pedro. He was cruising heelside on his board, fully in the zone and in control, and me, always trying to get a better angle to best capture the action for the content, I slid in, got really close to Pedro, sweeping in front of him, basically cutting him off, and what ensued was an epic fall. He was fine and the footage was hilarious. Unfortunately, it's highly unlikely anyone will ever see that footage again. I decided to put the camera away to fully enjoy my runs, so I put the GoPro in my jacket pocket, confident that I didn't have to button it shut, and proceeded to do several runs up and down the mountain. At some point, I reached into my pocket, and guess what? The pocket was now empty. My heart sank, my GoPro had fallen out somewhere, and was nowhere to be found. I backtracked the mountain, but couldn't find anything. After some back and forth with the Lost and Found department, they informed me nothing had been retrieved thus far. I was so bummed. Not so much about the gear, but about the lost footage. Trying to forget that bit of misfortune, we continued to reconnect with our Queenstown mates. I got to once again indulge in a brownie from Fergbaker, easily my most favorite dessert in Queenstown, and revisited a windy lake Wakatipu, which conjured up memories of drunken nights and bone-chilling winter swims. We then did my second favorite activity in Queenstown and played a round of frisbee golf in Queenstown Gardens. It was just a little windy that day. Just a little. We've got Sam Ladner representing the UK. No visit would be complete without a karaoke night at Surreal. Despite being away for a year, the bar staff remembered us, and even my song. Shall we cue up Santeria? The cute bartender asked after bringing us our drinks. Yet another memorable karaoke night to add to the long list, night capping of course at local punk/metal bar Zephyr, followed by staggering up the street to the Night and Day for crisp cut chips smothered in sour cream and sweet chili sauce. The next day we had a final brunch with our mates before heading over to the Queenstown airport to fly back to Australia. I was so stoked about this flight because we'd never flown in or out of Queenstown. Therefore, we'd never caught a glimpse of an aerial view of New Zealand's snow-capped Southern Alps. And they were absolutely breathtaking. Now in Melbourne, my home away from home that I refer to as the Montreal of Down Under, we hit the food scene running, eating some high-end, not-so-cheap dim sum. Craving Filipino food, we checked out a local spot called CJ's Grill, eating their specialty dish, pork sisig. We admired the street art of South Melbourne, reconnected with our dear friend Andrew, who lived and worked with us in Queenstown, and was now helping run the YHA we were conveniently staying at. Link's favorite band of all time is Silverchair. You might remember them as the Aussie Nirvana with longer hair, which I'm sure lead singer Daniel Johns would frog stomp me over if you overheard that. Our week-long visit to Melbourne coincided with the launch of Daniel Johns' Past, Present, and Future Never exhibition in the heart of Melbourne. This exhibition was a time machine, like there was an actual DeLorean in the room. Through Daniel Johns' life from Newcastle High School report cards, GQ cover shoots opposite the urinals, and outfits worn in music videos and magazine cover shoots. I guess you could also call this a highly elaborate promotion vehicle for his new album. At this point, I was itching to replace my lost GoPro, so I picked up a GoPro 8, a much better mount that was also on clearance, and a 128 gig Extreme Plus micro SD card. The GoPro 8, however, was a lemon. It refused to turn on, so I returned to JB Hi-Fi the next day and exchanged it for a much better GoPro Hero 9, which had a front-facing screen, great for vlogging, and a bundle pack which came with a bonus battery and a wireless remote. With this new gear, I'm ready to start shooting again and continue sharing our stories with you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate each and every one of you, my viewers, and I'll see you in the next one.